Hello students, I am your educator Tanvi. Now let us discuss part 3 of sexual reproduction in flowering plants. So in the last lecture we had discussed what pollination is and what are the different types of pollination, and there are different agents of pollination, means by which process or by which medium pollination can happen. So we discussed there are biotic factors and abiotic factors. So first we'll be discussing the abiotic factors or abiotic pollinators. So wind is one of the abiotic pollinators. So it is the more common type amongst the abiotic pollinations. And pollen grains for carrying out wind pollination, they should be light and non-sticky. That is very much understandable, because if they have to move through wind, they have to be light and they have to drop on certain flowers, so they have to be non-sticky on their path. And most importantly, the plants which have to undergo pollination through wind, they should possess well exposed stamens. Stamen is the male reproductive part, so it should be well exposed, means so that the pollen grains are easily accessible. Then feathery stigma. The stigma means we are talking about the female reproductive part, which is going to receive the pollen grains. So that should be feathery. So what is the importance? So that these feathery type of stigma, they trap the pollen grains. You can see over here, this is example of a corn. You can see the stigma over here is feathery, pink colored, right? So what is the advantage? If the plant has to be pollinated through wind, first of all, the pollen grains should be light and non-sticky. Second of all, the stigma should be feathery, or the structure should be such so that it can easily trap the airborne pollen grains. Now generally only single ovule is there in each ovary. Alright, and numerous flowers are packed into inflorescence. We are talking about the plants in which wind pollination occurs. Generally single ovule is there, and numerous means many flowers are packed into an inflorescence. You can see over here. So this is the inflorescence, means the flower structure we are talking about. So numerous, many flowers means many stigma, many styles are there in these tassels. So this feathery type of structure is referred to as tassels. So this is the example of a corn. And wind pollination is very common in grasses. Next, talking about water pollination, which is rare in flowering plants, and in the flowering plants, mainly in monocots, this type of pollination occurs, like Vallisneria, Hydrilla, sea grasses like Zostera. And not all aquatic plants use water for pollination, means it is a rare type of pollination, but it is very interesting. We'll be discussing now. Water hyacinth and water lily, these flowers, what they do, they emerge above the level of water, and then these are pollinated by insects or wind. Means because these are aquatic plants, they are submerged in the water. So when the pollination season comes, then the flowers will move above the level of water to receive pollen. Like we can see the example of Vallisneria over here. So this is the Vallisneria plant. You can see the leaves are ribbon shaped. Yes. And this is the male inflorescence over here. Right. So there are female flowers and male flowers. What will happen? The female flower, they will reach the surface like this. Can you see? They are, because these are ribbon shaped, fine. They are flexible. So they will reach this water top. And the male flowers, they will release the pollen and they will be suspended in water. So here bright chances are there of these pollen grains to stick on the stigma, right? So this is how pollination is happening in Vallisneria. Now talking about sea grasses, you can see these are sea grasses, fine. These are the leaves, the flowers over here. So female flowers, they will remain submerged. You can see over here, this is the water level. So they will remain submerged. What will happen? The pollen grains are going to be released over here. So here the chances are there that these pollen grains will sit on the stigma and then pollination will occur. So now because these pollen, they are released in the water, Now they have to be protected from wetting. So how they are being protected from water? This pollen grains, such pollen grains, they have a mucilaginous covering, means a protective sheath is there, so that they can be easily sticking on to the stigma of the female flower and then carry out the pollination. Now let us talk about biotic pollination. Biotic pollination means pollination which happens with the help of living organisms like bees, butterflies, wasps, ants, birds also, and sometimes bats. So dominating biotic pollinators are insects and bees. These are the major biotic pollinators. And even larger animals like reptiles have been seen to be pollinating flowers. Very rare though. Now, what are the characteristics of the flowers which are pollinated by insects? They have to be large because insect has to sit on it. It has to be colorful and attractive for the insect to sit and bring the pollen. It should be fragrant and rich in nectar. Why rich in nectar? See, nectar and pollen grains, they act as floral rewards for the insects and bees. Floral rewards means that what is the benefit of insects and bees in carrying out the pollination, right? See, pollination is useful for the flower, for the plants, but what advantage insects and bees will be taking is they will be taking nectar and they will be taking the pollen grains. So that is why these are the characteristics of insect pollinating flowers. They are rich in nectar. Then to attract flies and beetles, rarely flowers can also produce foul odor. Instead of being pregnant, they can produce foul odor, and some flies and beetles, they are attracted towards such smell. Then other floral rewards, like we have seen floral rewards as nectar and pollen grains. Other floral rewards for insects and different bees can vary from plant to plant. Like in case of the tallest flower you can see over here, Amorphophallus. Yes, in this area what happens, it provides a safe place for the insects and bees to lay eggs. So that is another advantage for them. Then this plant you can see, this white color plant, this is yucca, and these white colored insects are moths. Now in this also the floral reward vary, means they cannot, both of them cannot complete their life cycle without each other. Means a particular stage of its development depends on this flower. Without this flower, this insect cannot complete the whole life cycle. So the floral rewards or benefits for these pollinators vary from plant to plant. Next, and an interesting topic is nectar robbing. Now, what is nectar robbing? Can you guess? See, the floral reward is nectar. Okay. So, if the suppose just imagine a situation in which some insect or bee, what it is doing, it is taking the nectar, but it is not bringing about pollination. So that can be termed as nectar robbing, means it is taking the robbing or taking away the nectar, but it is not carrying out pollination. It is very selfish. Like in some bumblebees and in some ants, this plant is showing this is a very much selfish bee and it is robbing the nectar, but it will not carry out the pollination. So next, let us look at this interesting topic, outbreeding devices. So from the term outbreeding means variations. Out means different. Okay, breeding in with different organisms. So how the plant has certain devices or devised itself to carry out genetic variations. First, it is continued self-pollination. Okay, continued self-pollination means if the plant is only undergoing self-pollination again and again, no variations will be there. That is clear. So that will result in inbreeding depression. Now, what is inbreeding depression? Depression here refers to lack of biological fitness, and inbreeding refers to that only self-pollination is happening, no chances of genetic variations. Okay, so that is why the plants have devised some outbreeding devices. Means the flowering plants have certain devices which are going to discourage this self-pollination, and it will encourage cross-pollination for genetic variations. Okay. So what can be done? One thing is that to prevent autogamy. Remember autogamy? Autogamy means self-pollination, means the male and female flower is in the same plant and the pollination is happening in the same flower, not only the plant. In the same flower only you have male and female reproductive parts and self-pollination is happening. So in such case, to prevent autogamy, what plants have devised a method that the pollen release and stigma receptivity, they are not synchronized. Now listen to it very carefully. It means the time of pollen release and the time at which the stigma is active, those two time periods are different. They are not synchronized. Means, for example, pollen is released now, but the stigma is not ready to receive. Means the chemical signals, nothing is working in it. So what will happen? Even if pollen is there, it will not stick on stigma and pollen tube will not be formed. Okay. Then next is the anther and stigma are placed in different positions. So this can be done that anther and stigma are little far away so that autogamy cannot happen, contact cannot happen. Next outbreeding device is self-incompatibility. So why we are saying third outbreeding device? Because first two we have discussed. One is that the pollen grain and this stigma, they are not receptive at the same time. All right. And second one we have just now discussed, that to prevent the autogamy, what can be done? Anther and stigma, their positions are far away or at a different place to avoid contact. Now let us look at this third outbreeding device, that is self-incompatibility. So what it means? That the self means the self pollen, it is incompatible. Incompatible means it is not able to fertilize the ovules of the female flower. Okay, so genetically some differences are there in the plant that it will prevent the pollen of the same flower to fertilize the ovule of the same flower. Okay. Next is production of unisexual flowers. Yes. So this is another method. Unisexual flowers means that both male and female flowers are present on the same plant. Now listen to this very carefully. If male and female flowers are present on the same plant, it can prevent autogamy, but it cannot prevent geitonogamy. Remember geitonogamy? See again this diagram I have taken again. See, this is plant A and this is plant B. Okay. Geitonogamy means, suppose this is the male flower and this is the female flower. It is present on the same plant. Okay. So if it is present, geitonogamy can happen. Again, geitonogamy is type of self-pollination, but we need to avoid this also so that inbreeding depression doesn't occur. So what we will do, what actually the plant does, male and female flowers, they are present on different plants. Okay, means in the same plant you cannot have the male and female flower. So let us be clear, there are two situations. One is, suppose this is the plant. Okay, one flower is there, it contains the male reproductive part also and female reproductive part also. So it is containing both, but the plant doesn't allow this to happen so that self-pollination doesn't occur. Now other situation can be, this is a plant, in this flower is male flower and this is female flower. Again self-pollination can occur. So what the plant does, it starts producing unisexual flowers. Means in this plant only male flower will be there and in another plant female flower will be there. Okay. Next, coming to the topic, pollen pistil interaction. What it means, that how the pollen grain is going to interact with stigma, style and carry out the fertilization. So the pistil, it has the ability to recognize the pollen, right? So it can be right type, then it is compatible, means the pollen tube will form and means the pollen grain will germinate. If it is wrong type or incompatible, so even if the pollen grain drops on the this stigma, it is not going to germinate. So this ability to interact means to accept or reject the pollen, that is a chemical mediated interaction. So certain chemicals are involved which will decide whether this pollen has to germinate on the stigma or not. So all the events from pollen deposition on stigma and until this pollen tube is germinated and it enters into the ovule, all these events are collectively called as pollen pistil interaction. Means deposition of pollen on stigma, germination of pollen and formation of pollen tube, and entering of this pollen tube in the ovule to carry out the fertilization. All these interactions are referred to as pollen pistil interactions. Now just imagine, for example, if compatible pollination means if pollen tube grows and finally it reaches the ovary, then what is going to happen? See, pollen grains, they contain male gametes. Okay. Now remember that pollen grains can be shed at 2-celled stage or 3-celled stage. Yes. So if the pollen grain, it sheds at 2-celled stage, what is happening? Then this one generative cell is there, remember, vegetative cell and generative cell. So if the pollen grain has shed at 2-cell stage, then generative cell is going to divide and it will produce the 2 male gametes while the pollen is germinating. Okay, means during the formation of pollen tube, what is going to happen? Generative cell will divide and form 2 male gametes. Now other situation, if the pollen grain has shed at 3-celled stage, okay, then what will happen? No division of this generative cell because already it has divided in the 3-cell stage. So from the beginning only, means the pollen, before forming the pollen tube, it is containing 2 male gametes. All right. So now pollen tube is going to reach the ovule through micropylar end. Remember the structure, the opening. Okay, the opening area is called as the micropyle. Okay, so this through micropyle, it is going to enter and fuse with the ovules. Now at the micropyle end, if you remember, there are synergids. There are cells called as synergids, and they are having some finger-like extensions called as filiform appendages. Okay, so this is going to guide actually the pollen tube. These synergids, this filiform apparatus, it is going to guide the pollen tube to reach to the ovule. Here it will be more clear. You can see these are the pollen grains. Okay, if it is at 2-cell stage, then what will happen? The generative cell is going to divide and male gametes will be formed. Suppose it is at 3-cell stage, then already it is containing 2 male gametes. Now this germination is happening. See over here, it is being shown that many pollen grains are sticking on the stigma, but only one pollen grain is able to produce proper pollen tube, and this pollen tube through this synergid is going to enter here, where egg cell is present. Clear? So this end is micropylar end, and this end is generally called as collateral. Very much clear by now. Okay, you can see over here in the synergid, this filiform apparatus is there. This is guiding this pollen tube to enter inside, and then it will reach the egg nucleus finally. So there is an experiment, very easy experiment to study pollen germination. How we can do it in the lab? We can just dust some pollen from some flowers on a glass slide, and we can put a drop of sugar solution. This will promote the formation of pollen tube. Then after 15 to 30 minutes, we can observe under microscope, and beautiful pollen tubes will be coming out of the grains like this. Properly we'll be able to observe. Then coming to the next, crop improvement program. Now how these different interactions which we have studied, how these will help in crop improvement, let us see. Artificial hybridization. Hybridization, you remember, hybridization we have studied in lower classes. That means 2 different varieties are crossed. Okay, so artificial means that experimentally we are doing. It is not happening naturally. So only desired pollen grains, they can be used for pollination. Okay, suppose I want that, okay, this plant A is there and it has some good characteristics. I want that these characteristics should be introduced in the new plant. So I will select this pollen grain of this plant and I will use this for pollination. So this is happening artificially. Now how this can be done? By emasculation and bagging techniques. So listen to it very carefully. Emasculation means, suppose a female parent, it is having bisexual flowers. Okay, both the flowers, male and female flowers are there. What we are going to do, we will remove anthers. Okay, anthers are producing pollen. Okay, so we are going to remove the anthers firstly. Now what is going to happen, when the female parent is ready for or the stigma is ready for receiving the pollen, then we are going to dust the stigma with the desired pollen grains. Okay, so now these emasculated flowers, these are covered with bag. Why it is covered with a bag? To prevent the contamination of stigma. So means what we are doing, firstly we are removing the anthers, because we don't want this pollen, we want some other pollen grain of our desired trait. Okay, so that is why we are removing. This removal is called emasculation. Now after this, what we are doing, we are making our plant prepare, we are preparing our plant. So we will cover the emasculated flowers with a bag. It is generally a butter paper, and when the stigma is receptive, means that stage has been attained, what we are going to do, we are going to remove the bag and we will dust the pollen grains on it, so that the desired pollen grain is going to fuse with the ovules. So when stigma attains receptivity, again the same thing, mature pollen is dusted on it, and again the flowers are rebagged. See over here, it is being done. So why this is done? To avoid cross contamination. Okay, so then fruits are allowed to develop. See over here, it is showing that these are cut. Okay, the anthers are cut. This is called as emasculation, and after that it is being bagged so that contamination is not there. When stigma is ready, we are going to remove the bag and dust it with the desired pollen, and again it can be rebagged, it can be allowed to develop. So study these concepts carefully. Thank you.